Bob, have you ever encountered a situation in the sale of a co-op where the seller wants to sell it, the buyer is going to buy it, but for some reason the deal just doesn't happen?
Yes, Jason, that happens occasionally in co-op transactions. And the reason is that people often forget that in a co-op transaction between a seller and a buyer, it's not just the two parties who are interacting. You also have the co-op board itself, who is a silent partner at the table. They have almost a veto right to kill a deal in the event that for some reason they decline the buyer. So this is what typically happens. The buyer and seller would first enter into a contract. The buyer would go to a bank, get his financing, and then once the financing is in place, they would go to the co-op board for what's called a co-op interview. And the co-op would interview the client, sort of like a meet and greet, but also a little more in depth. By that time, they will have screened the buyer's financials, tax returns. Maybe they want letters of recommendation and reference from friends, business people, landlords of the buyer. And after reviewing all of that, the co-op may reject the buyer. Now, you often say, well, how could the co-op reject the buyer if the bank, who is also a major partner in this transaction, approved it? Well, many times the co-op has stricter financial regulations than the bank does, and sometimes the co-op does not like the sale price of the unit. That usually is a pretty big factor in determining whether or not a co-op will approve a sale. For instance, if the co-op contract calls for the sale of the apartment at $200,000 and the co-op board feels that the real price should be maybe 220 or 230, they will actually kill the deal because they don't like the price of the co-op. Now, the interesting thing about co-op decisions is that it's non-reviewable. You can't appeal it, and you don't even know the reason. The co-op sends you a letter saying, we're sorry, if they even use those words, but we are not approving this transaction. Your application has been denied. There is no reason whatsoever given. Even attorneys ask afterwards, is there something we can do to improve our client's application or financial standing? We're usually told, no, the deal is dead. You're not getting our approval. So the point to remember when you enter into a co-op transaction is that the silent partner at the table, the co-op board, has veto power. And that, Jason, is why many times a co-op deal could fall apart even though the seller, the buyer, and the lender are all in favor of it.